Hey everybody, and welcome to Robin's house. I wanted to do a quick little tutorial today. I hope it's quick, about how you could turn almost any card into a shaker card. And so I was using the February stamp of the month to get this great frame in order for the Operation Smiles card that we did. So I wanted to show you real quick how to do that. So once you stamp your frame on the surface that you want to use, this is the one that will be popped up. You're going to want to remove the inside of the frame. So you take your self-healing mat and your X-Acto knife, and you just take your knife and you cut around. This does take a minute, and depending on how sharp your knife is and how solid your base is, it will take a minute. So, but all you do is just follow that line around that edge all the way around. And if your lines aren't perfect, it's okay. I'm going to show you a trick. So that's basically what you do. You go all the way around with your X-Acto knife, and then you just punch out your card when it's done. And I don't know if you can see, yeah, that it's a little bit, there's whiteness there. But I'm going to show you how to cheat. So you take your marker, you're just going to go around all those edges. That will even up anything that you weren't, if you have white showing, if you have, number one, the white showing in the inside, and then if you have any white showing because you miscut your frame. So that's a super easy way to get rid of all those miniature little blemishes and make it look like you cut perfectly. So there we go. We have a perfectly cut frame now. And now it is time for the stamping part. So when you have your stamping, so this is your card base. And so you have your stamp and you're like, okay, so if I'm stamping, where do I stamp so that it fits through the hole? So my recommendation is you stamp through the stamp. So I put this second piece of paper on top of the first. And then I'm looking through my stamp and I noticed, oh my stamp is a smidgelet too big for this frame. So I created another frame to go over the top of this one. That way when I stamp, I won't be stamping on my card. So, okay, I have my thing even where I want it to be. I have my smile big. So I want to stamp it so I can see my smile big, but maybe not that big dot that is at the end of smile big. See, we go. So if I had stamped it without this thing, this little circle from the smile big would have gone onto my card front and that would have made me sad. But as it is now, I know exactly where to stamp because I went through the hole. I'm going to set that aside for just 1 second because there are, so say for pretend we wanted to stamp again, but we didn't have this stamp set. So you would take your other stamp sets and say, okay, well, this almost fits, right? So you would just kind of hold it up and see how it fits. And I don't think I would be sad if that bottom Y was underneath the frame. I think I could live with that thank you in there. And then there's other stamps that you could use, like Time to Celebrate You. Again, I would be okay if that Y was down there. Or you could have, a bunch of thank yous in there. Or just a note. Now that one fits completely in there and you could stamp any old way you want. So you can go back through your old stamp sets and find other messages that would be appropriate. And you can either, if it's a little big, use this one, or if you know you can do it. And then the other thing to watch out for is, of course, when you get ink on those sides, if you don't use a sticky, then you could just as easily transfer ink from those corners on there, and that would be just as bad. Okay, so that is how to get the frame in there, but how about how to get your shaker card piece on there? Okay, so we have this to set aside, and now we have our frame. I'm going to turn it over so you can see where my markers are. And with my liquid glass, I'm going to add a piece of acetate. And you can technically use any piece of acetate that comes in any of your junk mail or on any packaging, especially on small projects like this where you only need a smidgelet. And then I go a little on the inside. I go on the very inside of the frame, the very outside of the acetate. And that way it'll all be stuck down. And I do have one questionable spot here that had a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try to push it away from the frame instead of inside the frame. But there we go. So that is the first thing. And I made my mistake on that. Put the acetate down first before you do your squares. And then I use these other shaker, all the shaker insides. I just cut them so that they're a size that I want to use for this, because I'm going to be building now a little frame around my frame. And I'm going to have it be as close as I can to the frame, because any extra space that I leave is just where my gems are going to sit for no reason, all hidden. So I put mine pretty tight, and you can see there's a little space on that one. That's a bit, maybe a smidgelet too much space. So we'll have to see. But the best idea is to make at least these front corners all touch. There you go. Just fill those space, and then at the very end, you may need to snip some extra, but I think I'm going to get out. Oh, yeah, see, I have another little space that I just think is going to, my gems will come out of that one. So any spaces that you have that you don't think are right, just take one of your things and just cut it down even smaller, just enough to fill that hole in there. There we go. It doesn't even have to be in the correct spot. So there we go. There is our frame. And when we turn it around, you can't see any of those foam squares in that frame. And then of course you also need to put foam squares around all these edges, because you need to pop not just around the frame, but the whole card. So you gotta put those in there too. Make sure that it is sturdy enough. So there you go. We have a frame that's ready to go. And then now it's, where do you put all the gems? So one could say, well, I pour them in here, and then I put the card on here and hope I can see it. I don't vote for that plan. So what I did is I know where my message is, and I know where the foam squares are not going to be. So I just put all my little gems on top of my message, exactly on top of it. And I did on this card, I believe I put a little too many gems. So I'm going to put a little fewer this time, so that it will fill the holes, but you can still see so big, smile big in there. So that is how you do that. And then you got to take all these foam squares off, because I guess technically you don't have to. It takes a minute, but the shaker cards are so fun because they're interactive and just add that little splash of color right in that window section there, and it's so pretty. And it really isn't that hard. The hardest part is remembering to put the acetate on before the foam squares, and then cutting out that little window message, the window space. But it is an important step, and if you're going to do many of them, it's an easy step. So there we go. We can line it up just how we want it to be. Your message is right there in the center. There we go. See, I don't have quite as many in there in this one, and I like it much better. So that is how you create a window. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Happy crafting.